No.
Within these walls. I do not have to pull back the curtains to know that they are watching me. The house has towered above the small inlet of Thorns Bay for over 130 years. 3 stories tall and 5 times as wide, it stands as a reminder to the citizens below of our family's wealth and superiority. If not for the hard-working laborers that toiled under my great-grandfather's stringent fist and acute work ethic, the bay would not be the thriving seaport it is today. The black, merciless depths of the swirling sea would have swallowed the shops and rocky shoreline decades ago. Built with the blood and sweat of those wise enough to fall in line with the Thorne family name and sacrifice their worth in the pursuit of coin, our family owes them nothing more. We have given them land, taught them to turn the ocean's tide in their favor, and enough space to raise their own generations. Yet, like the greedy and grubby hands of their own spoiled children, they reach outwards constantly. They beg like penniless merchants with no discernible wares and whisper blasphemous curses like gussied up whores in church. They offer us respectful smiles when we bless their shops with our money and shake their sweaty hands. I see them as surely as they see me. They turn away and mutter prayers, anxious to scrub away the taint of our privilege. They treat each interaction with us as a gamble with death itself, which is preposterous. They are the filthy ones, their fingers coated with dirt and the stench of sea salt and fish entrails. They speak in hushed tones about Thornhouse, how it lurches on the hill above, blocking out the sunlight on the brightest of days. They barely acknowledge the fact that on the rainiest, the storms gather above and our home takes the brunt of the weather. Every window in our estate has battled the elements. Each pane of glass has been lit up by lightning strikes that hint at the ferocity of the heavens. The dark clouds and pelting rains remind us that hell is equally as brooding. They say our family is cursed, that the expensive decor is an elaborate mask to hide our depravity, and solid walls that shield us from them. They say that it contains devils. These words are slander, for the town has its own share of wanton beasts woven into every stone and plank of wood. What evidence do I possess to support this? One has only to look at the careless mingling of their bloodlines to see the truth. We have kept our family line pure, a further protection from those outside of the estate. Perhaps this misunderstood tactic has led them to believe us vile, corrupted in some way. Those outside our family are simply unworthy, keeping their distance while eyeing our monetary wealth and influence with jealous hearts. That kind of darkness can spoil the strongest of men and throw at the skirts of even the most bashful housewife. Age is a greater spoiler, ravaging this house and our family name with errant brushstrokes like a feverish artist gone mad. Mother was the first to feel that sting, the watercolors of time washing away behind her eyes, lost in thought most days. When the mind withers, the body begins to follow suit, searching for some form of congruity. The soul itself demands balance, it seems, at any cost. Her blue eyes once sparkled, but now the azure is given way to a gray tone reminiscent of early morning storm clouds. Fractures in her flawless skin tell stories I prefer to not read. Her full figure has withered and sagged, begging to slip from her bones as easily as the shoulder strap of her satin nightdress. Her movements are slow and meticulous. Some days, it seems she doesn't move at all. Today was different, though. While I was contemplating opening the curtains and peering down on those below, I heard her call my name. At first, I thought I was dreaming. It wasn't often she raised her tone these days, preferring to hum melodies from her youth as she cleaned. Sometimes she would whisper to herself, similar to the forcible exhales of a dying wind. She told me once that speaking aloud was a grim reminder of her failing faculties, and that her melodious singing voice was lost somewhere in the layers of dust surrounding us. I refrained from comment and instead kissed her the sunken depth of her cheekbone. Her words hinted at something I had long expected. Her obsessive and futile cleaning rituals were not to keep the rooms presentable. They were a heartbreaking search for the things she had lost, tangible or otherwise. I descend the staircase, trailing my fingers along the banister in anticipation. It is even less common that she would spend the afternoon baking, but the scent of fresh bread beckons me downstairs. It is nearly overpowering. I listen to the echoes of my footfalls with each step. Mother does not turn to greet me as I approach the mahogany table in the dining area. She remains seated, the same lost expression on her face I've come to expect. She has not bothered to set a space for Father, or even for herself. Positioned to her left is a plate and a glass of what appears to be red wine. A small loaf of bread rests on the plate, appearing much drier than the aroma suggests. Even if her effort to cook is a failure, I will be respectful and thank her. It has been months since she has even attempted such tasks.
She is not pure, Quentin. You know this. This is not our way, she says.
Her voice is a whispered tremor, nervous and disgusted. She will not give her blessing with a smile or even a nod. She understands the necessity of what I have asked, and she accepts it, but she will curse it all the same, just as Father has. I lift the glass to my lips, swallowing and clearing my throat. The wine is warm and thick, a bitter reminder of what all I have done, a precursor to what I have taken upon myself to do. Yes, Mother, I understand, but I feel Bethany will make me a fine wife, despite the obvious inconveniences to our ancestral line. If the Thorne family name is to continue, she will carry the weight of this misstep in our traditions. She will bear as many children as her body will allow. When her body cannot endure any further, this momentary lapse will be buried, along with her, if necessary.
Bring her something to eat at least. Can't have her wasting away upstairs, she says.
I avoid eye contact, but place a trembling hand on her sloped shoulders. Her head lolls to the side, her dry flesh nuzzling mine. It is meant to be a loving gesture, but the texture of her skin, along with the lifeless resting position of her jaw, is a bitter reminder of how lost she truly is.
Check on your father,
she whispers. The words coalesce into a soft musical note before slipping into the drone of one of her melancholic melodies again. I take a bite of the bread before picking up the plate and leaving her to her dwindling thoughts. The bread tastes bitter and dry, crumbling in my mouth like ash. Perhaps Bethany will find it more palatable. Father sits in his study, reading in silence and smoking his pipe. The hallway to the room is adorned with paintings. Some of them are donations in lieu of payment towards monetary obligations or gifts from business ventures. Some started decades before. Father considers himself a collector of art, and his peculiar taste in such is often dark or moody. Even the family portraits he has commissioned are swathed in shadows that fall menacingly in bluish-gray tones that resemble cloudbursts. The faces of my ancestors stretch high along the darkened corridor. They keep watch over all who walk these halls. The sullen expressions and glaring stares suggest that much more than the muted colors in the canvas. They haunt this place as much as the ghosts themselves. I do not dwell on their gaze and remind myself that they are family all the same. Judgmental eyes are easier to ignore when they watch from beyond the grave, unlike those awaiting me outside the manor's walls. My hand grasps the doorknob, noting how much colder this one seems to the others in the house. I turn and push the door open slowly. The wood groans and the hinges creak, warning Father that his resting place is being disturbed. Father has not been a violent man in years, but it is always best to err on the side of caution when approaching him. Upon entering, I turn to see my reflection in the antique mirror, hidden behind a thin layer of dust. The scars on my cheek and discolored skin are permanent reminders of days past, when I failed to consider such an approach. The oversized leather armchair is his sanctuary, surrounded by walls filled with volumes of books and collected literature. Multiple languages adorn the spines, most of them unrecognizable to me. Some are possibly not meant for human eyes. Such warnings have never deterred Father, though. Sometimes it compelled him to desire it even more. The heart wants, simply because the mind obsesses. I am thankful that the floor is carpeted, masking my footsteps despite his lack of ire as of late. It is a silly notion, but memories have a way of lingering long after the danger has subsided. Sometimes you wear it like a warm coat, keeping the chill from your bones. The air in the room is pungent. The earthy and sweet aroma of his pipe tobacco has been traded for the stench of stale smoke and musty books, with an underlying scent of dead leaves. I set the plate down and opened the worn and wooden box on the table to his left, next to his reading lantern. The light from the lamp died weeks ago, much like Father's willingness to interact. I reach inside and grab a small handful of tobacco. It is dried and crunches between my fingers. If I closed my fist, it would threaten to turn to powder in my palm. Not long ago, only the freshest and finest of tobacco would do. Father was not picky anymore. Smoking, like most things in Thornhouse these days, were rituals for the sake of ritual. It is the act of participating that brings life to the darkened rooms that I inhabit. I understand this even more than Mother and Father. It is how I have not succumbed to those outside. It is how I have avoided the ghost stories each room tries to whisper as I make my rounds. Their tales hold no more weight than that which I allow. Such burdens are for those who are weak. Weakness and guilt are dangerous bedfellows. The comfort they offer a man is assuredly the cushioned lining of a coffin. I remove the pipe from his mouth, dumping the old tobacco into the tray. I pack the newer blend into it with trembling fingers. I look into his distant eyes, which seems to be focused not on my face, but somewhere above me. I glance to the high domed ceilings. Fractures dance along the edges, and the worn white paint giving way to the wood beneath. The multitude of dark splotches stretching from end to end are similar to the stains of nicotine lining his fingertips. I nod, placing the pipe between the discolored slits of his blistered lips. I strike the match, and it lights. He never blinks, even as I hold the flame closer to his pensive face. The flame is inches from his bushy eyebrows, singeing the white hairs. Still, he doesn't move. I wave the flame out with a weary smile. I wait for the ragged inhale as he draws on the pipe with collapsed lungs. The blood on his vest has long since dried, dyeing the fabric a beautiful mixture of royal blue and crimson. I grasp the handle of the knife protruding from his chest and pull, and then push, and I hear the familiar crack of his ribs and watch as a small puff of smoke escapes into the air. It billows around his head and mine. And I repeat this several times. Father thanks me with a gruff and wheezing gasp of gratitude. I much prefer this to the loud and angry bellows that used to threaten my eardrums daily. Satisfied, I close the door behind me and I proceed up the stairs to my betrothed, the ravishing Bethany Valancourt. I approach her room, rapping gently on the door. On the third knock, the door creaks open as if by an unseen hand. 3 is a magical number, and she always answers on the third knock. She is a creature of habit, as am I. Admittedly, my weary heart leaps each time I realize this fact. Bethany is turned away, facing the plate glass bedroom window. Her hair trails down her back. The curls are the color of a starless midnight, as soft as the feathery down of a jackdaw. The curves of her hips and legs are a ghostly silhouette concealed behind the wisps of her translucent gown. The nightdress is a family heirloom. It is a gift of fine embroidery and silk, worn by generations of Thorn women. It accentuates the contour of her form and solidifies her right as an heir to our hallowed name. They come for us, love. She knows I speak the truth. Her attention has been on the iron bars of the front gates below. She is like a statue frozen in time, watching from the window, waiting. Her voice has been warning of this moment for days, a constant carousel of guilt and doubt in my skull. If what we believe is true, then I must look at her one last time. I brought something to eat. Mother has tried her hand at baking again. It's up to you if you wish to risk it. I place the plate on the windowsill and sigh. It is doubtful she'll even bother. She has not eaten in days, which is evident not only in the rail-thin arms hanging limp at her side, but also the features of her face. Her skin is dry and her eyelids are heavy, her cheeks are hollowed and sunken. The expression is one of perpetual worry, her mouth suspended in a position equating to a sob, or maybe a scream. But her eyes, they seem alive. The dark brown of her irises are flecked with golden specks that offer some chance, some slim chance at hope. The pupils suggest a complacency that's almost peaceful. It is a sobering finality of our acceptance. This dichotomy makes her all the more lovely, the perfect bride. I reach out and touch her shoulder. Her skin is cold fire under my hand, piercing the surface and ratcheting up my arm. I tremble, as if struck by a winter wind. That is soon replaced by a warmth in me that seems to separate the two of us, although we stand side by side. Her flesh is wrong, or perhaps mine is to blame. The distance between us is a void that threatens to swallow me whole. It's emptiness. It's something I've never felt with Mother, despite the fact that her voice sounds eerily like my own these days. Or with Father, and the stillness in the room that's a blessing. He silently smokes and reads, and thanks to the rigidness of my daily routine, life and death goes on. But this is different. This is the silent scream of failure, lurking beneath the surface of a fevered dream, a dream which I dare not wake, but I know I must eventually. Man can only slumber for so long before atrophy sets in. The muscles tremor and beg for attention, even as the mind pleads for silence. Her head falls forward and her frame slips to the side. I pull her towards me, crushing her to my chest. The thudding ache of my own heartbeat is deafening compared to that stillness of her own. I lift her up and cradle her in my arms. She is a bag of bones cocooned in a shroud of white lace, much heavier than she appears. It is like the gravity of Earth itself pulling her towards an open grave. I tighten my grip, refusing to let go despite the weight of it all. They are coming, she says. It is forceful but low-pitched, like the caw of 100 crows in my head. Downstairs, there is the thundering sound of angry men pounding on the doors. Each knock escalates in volume and intensity. The noise seems to rattle the framework of the house like the harsh hammering of nails in weakened wood. The walls themselves seem to move until the sound of shattered glass breaks the rhythm. Shards of it crack and crunch under the stomping feet of the people below. Their voices, there's so many. It is the incessant chattering of violent words and phrases spoken with vile and venomous tongues. Their minds are as poisoned as mine, and equally as lethal. I carry her to the banister, pausing at the top of the stairs. Men of every shape and size crowd the steps, a few women and children as well. They brandish pitchforks, axes, sharp sickles, and gardening implements, steel chains and oak branches ripped from trees. A few have even pulled bars from the gated entrance, thrusting them up and outwards like the spears of a ravenous jungle tribe. Others have lit torches, waving them about, igniting the paintings and tapestries with wild abandon. I kiss the flesh of her forehead and glare at them from above, as I always have. They are ravenous beasts, as cruel and judging as I. I see the folly of my thinking, and the desperation in their wild eyes suggests that they crave the same things that I do. We are not that different at all. The abundance and wealth in Thornhouse has divided us, but the insanity is infectious. It spreads quietly and with ease, polluting our brains until we lash out like starved animals. We are both the hunters and the hunted. We crave understanding, but preach our misgivings, oblivious to the connection we share. They ascend like the wave of soldier ants, restless and focused. Their legs carry them forward while their jaws clench and their teeth grind in anticipation of the kill. They are hungry, and they must be fed. This day has been over 100 years in the making, boiling under the surface of the floorboards beneath our own feet. Thornhouse welcomes it greedily. They are the workers, and Thorn's Bay is the colony. She is its queen, grown fat and complacent, surviving on the backs of them all. In time it never forgets. The cycle will continue even as these walls burn and tumble to the angry sea below. It is the cruelest of rituals. The flames lick up the walls, spreading out and engulfing my youth, my history, my birthright. The heat shines brighter than the light of the heavens and scorches like the bowels of hell. The people below grin ear to ear, howling of justice being served in our family's delusions of grandeur, shouting curses and reveling in my deserved demise. Like the house itself, I do welcome this. I take a deep breath and I smile. The flesh rises and flakes from my bones, the marrow and meat simmering. The sound is like the buzzing of flies. I will not cry nor beg, forcing myself to stand upright, accepting my place among my ancestors. I can hear Mother comforting me, humming her tune and whispering my name. It is not my voice mimicking her this time. It is undoubtedly her own. I try to keep my vision focused, to catch a glimpse of her. The black smoke filling the room makes it impossible, but I know she's there all the same. And I hear Father screaming my name, drunk on whiskey and wheezing. The smell of the flames around me are replaced by the scent of expensive tobacco and books bound in leather. I feel his rough hands around my throat, catch a whiff of the alcohol on his breath. I do not dread what he will do to me next. His anger is irrelevant, dwarfed by the incandescence that blazes around us. It sears the flesh and scorches the past, leaving only embers. It cleanses his sins as well as mine. And I feel my vocal cords threaten to snap, withering to nearly nothing. Whether the fire is to blame or the sharp edge of a weapon, I can't tell. I collapse to my knees, watching as Bethany falls from my arms. My vision dims, and the world is darker than the midnight of her hair, followed by the reassuring white of her silken gown. They say that these walls were built to house devils. My family says the history makes demons of us all.